Good afternoon. You're watching Businessworld live here on One News. I'm Jes Delos Santos. So let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today, Tuesday. All right, sentiment running high on the index today as shares rose on the back of looser GCQ restrictions in Metro Manila until the end of the month. The main index is inching closer to the 7,000 level once again. That's after jumping by 0.9% to 6,976.73. That is a PSEi's highest level since February, back when it hit 6,991. But like what I said earlier, NCR together with Bulacan are still under GCQ, but with some restrictions being eased at least until June 30. So that means more operational capacity for the likes of gyms and other establishments, as well as dine-in services. For the latter, that's going to be at 30% capacity, but may even get an additional 10% if the establishment has secured a safety seal from the DTI. So how did that push specific stocks in today's trade? Just take a look at some of our food stocks here, particularly Jollibee, Max's, and Shakey's. As you can see right now, Jollibee, represented by the white line over here, is the PSEi's best performer for the day. That's up 3.8% at 215 pesos a share, its highest close yet since January last year. Now, Max has also made quite a surge, now at 7 pesos and 2 centavos. As you can see right there, that's represented by the orange line. That climbed 6.4%. More muted gains, however, for Pizza or Shakey's, but still on the upside. That's at 8 pesos and 10 centavos a piece, as shown by the yellow line right there. Now, looking at our other gainers for the day here, mall operators are getting bought here for the day. You have the likes of SM Prime and Mega World, both up over 1%. Consumer stocks also gaining. You have the likes of JG Summit, URC, and SM Investments. On the downside, though, you have Robinson's Land losing the most, down 1.7%. But the gains we've been seeing in the main index, though, is eclipsed by the rise in PH Resorts. That rose 9% today, extending its rally for the fourth day. That's on the back of expectations that it's preparing a private placement to raise funds for its main gaming asset. That's been spurring some investors to buy the stock, at least according to Manny Cruz of Papa Securities. The stock has been up 21% the past 4 days to 2 pesos and 30 centavos a share. Now, lots of gains for shares, but not the same here for the peso. It's a totally different story. That has fallen the most in close to 4 months as curbs were tightened in some parts of the country. The peso now, as you can see right here, is at 48 pesos and 1 centavo to the greenback, its lowest level yet since May 27. That's after falling close to 0.25% so far today. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Philippine businesses are struggling with higher import costs as the pandemic continues to affect global supply chain. The local steel industry, for one, is concerned with logistics and demand issues. The Philippine Iron and Steel Institute says prices of raw materials went up and so did demand as economies ramp up construction to boost activity. The unprecedented increase as well, or demand, is also fueling delays in import shipments. The Philippine Star reports that congestion is seen in some of the world's major ports. The Philippine Ports Authority says shipping lines are heavily focused on China, resulting in container shortages in other locations. Now, new content as well as collaboration with ABS-CBN is seen pushing the Kapatid network to profit by 2024. TV5 Chairman Manny Pangilinan tells the Philippine Star that the network has been able to sustain growth momentum in recent months. He says ABS-CBN content was able to help TV5 boost its ratings a bit. TV5 started airing ABS-CBN shows last January following collaborations with Signal, Bright Light Productions, and the Lopez-owned network. The network has also been aggressively producing its own entertainment content and recently welcomed new talents from other networks. GCQ stays in Metro Manila, albeit with looser curbs that extends mobility restrictions in whatever form for the entirety of the second quarter. How does that color the economy's recovery prospects? To discuss that, we have Union Bank's chief economist, Carlo Asuncion. Good afternoon, Carlo.
Yes, thank you, Jess, for having me.
All right, so again, GCQ is still in place, but with more leeway for movement and business operation. But on the flip side, a couple of areas, other areas outside the NCR, had their restrictions heightened. How do you see this affecting our growth prospects, recovery prospects at that?
Yeah, well, for second quarter, we have been monitoring it on I would say, a semi-real time basis using some certain methods. So we were looking at 6%. Well, our I would say the official view is 8.1 for second quarter, but a real time I'd say a real time economic growth at this point is at 6%. So probably with newer data and with this apparently even looking at how the markets have been behaving lately in the equities and even in forex. So you can see already how the market is trying to respond, and even economic activity is responding. So most probably we'll be seeing a little bit, higher than 6%, or even probably breaching our original estimate.
What do you think is going to drive that? If we at least are going to breach 8% for the second quarter, what do you think would be the main factor there?
Well, definitely, we know that a huge part of our economy is really consumption. So, if you get the people going out, pretty much GCQ with restrictions, that's 30% for meetings. So rather than nothing, 50% outdoor tourist attractions. That's pretty much that's plays into your I would say it's not discretionary spending, which is a huge chunk of
Mhm.
our economic growth. So if you have those at least opening a little bit more, then that would really play into at least catching up to that our initial estimate.
But isn't that a little bit too late, you think?
Yeah, well, we actually been thinking about that back in, well, we've still actually been talking about it a lot on how, it's just June, right?
Mhm.
We know that April and May were a little bit, a little bit tighter. So
Mhm.
that's why we were monitoring it on a real time basis. That's sort of we're trying to cover a base that way and trying to find out really, is it really going to make it that initial estimate, or is it going to be lesser? But at this point, with the numbers even coming in
Mhm.
for exports and imports, we're expecting remittances today. Hopefully, that will also be very positive or even double digit, because that's what our expectation, since because we know last year, so it actually was so deep, so um, yeah,
So then what's your projection for remittance? Just because it's coming up from a low base, you're expecting at least a double-digit growth.
24, I think 24, that was the forecast, 24, 25%. So
Mhm.
for April.
Mhm. Now, you were saying earlier about consumption activity. Well, a Bloomberg survey has raised inflation forecast for the Philippines to 4.1%. Are you projecting the same, and how does that complicate recovery efforts or recovery for a full year?
Yeah, we're a little bit, higher than that actually. Our latest estimates, I think 4.2 or 4.3. So we're pretty much aligned with some other think tank or multilateral. I think the last time I checked. So yeah, I mean, I think it really is. We know that it's still elevated because of particularly meat, and we haven't seen yet, no, the impact of the recent policy by the government of cutting the import tariff. So we haven't seen that yet, no, until we see it, until it's right there. So But definitely, it is going to be on a downward trend because pretty much that's coming from a lot of the other food items. But again, there's an upside risk to it. We've actually pointed that out on global oil prices, and I think even the BSP is really putting a tag on that.
So you're at least expecting a bit of a tempering for the second half of the year.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that's the expectation.
Okay, now cases have also plateaued at still relatively high levels of 6,000 daily for the entire country. Rollout of vaccines, according to our world in data, at least we're second in ASEAN in terms of doses administered, but eighth when you factor in total coverage here vis-a-vis the population. Carlo, are we vaccinating fast enough?
Yeah, well, I think even for say anecdotal stories, well, they're coming in. Even personally, well, at least for our own side, no, we were seeing that it's coming in, but it's really not yet that enough, or it's not like in other countries where it's they even have they can afford to actually give vaccines out to other countries. So I think we're not there yet, but we do expect that it will open close parenthesis flood. At least that's where the expectation is in terms of vaccines coming in the second half. And I've been hearing a lot about news about some of the vaccines coming in really fairly quickly in the second half. So hopefully, that's still something that we do want to think that it's going to be very positive when these things actually happen.
Okay, now talking about vaccines, we have financier Arisani Dominguez saying that we have enough money to actually vaccinate the entire population, at least 70 million Filipinos. They did acknowledge as well that debt is still high, but manageable with borrowings projected to reach at 3.1 trillion pesos. How much of a room do we really have to borrow more?
Yeah, I was looking at the numbers that they were showing this morning. So, well, if we're gonna really rely on those numbers, then we can really say that it's in terms of at least foreign debt to GDP, it's really low compared to previous highs of 50% plus. Now we're currently about 20 plus percent. Well, I think that's 27% of the show. So that's half. And in terms of we have wiggle room, as they say. But of course, if you're going to go back to that 50 plus percent, that's not a very good position to be at. So I think even us, we are watching carefully at least the sustainability of our debt at this point because it's something that you don't want to contend with, especially we're crossing the 2022 elections, and because basically this administration is going to be passing it on. No?
Mhm.
So of course, well, as they say, the tendency is to kick the can down the road. So because it's not going to be our responsibility, it's going to be somebody else's. So hopefully it's not that way. But I think even with the numbers that they're showing, it's I mean, there's wiggle room, as they say.
Now, lastly, Carlo, before we let you go, I know you've been asked this question repeatedly, even on this show, but what's your growth prospect now for the country, given, of course, the weeks that have passed since the last time we talked?
Yeah, we did downgrade our even before everybody else downgraded. We were when the first quarter number came out, we were looking at a 4% for 2021 and a
Mhm.
5.8 for 2022. So that's where we are at now. But with recent developments and with our monitoring on at least a semi-real time basis of economic growth, we think that it may actually bump up a little bit higher, probably, and that's the hope, no? But we just really look at the numbers. If the numbers say that it's going to be not 6%, but 6.9, then it's going to be a higher number than 4% at this point.
At least some level of optimism there. Hopefully that comes to fruition. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Carlo Asuncion, Chief Economist of Unionbank.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. And those are the biggest stories this trading day, June 15, 2021. Catch Businessworld live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos, and we are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.